Potiphar's wife likes him, wants him. He turns her down. She lies and says he tried to be with her, catch Joseph in jail. Joseph eventually comes out of jail. He eventually rises up to his station in life now, where he is over in Egypt, and he is able to feed everyone because they have a surplus in a land of famine. And so Joseph's brothers have been sent here to get some wheat and some food because there's a famine in the land. Then they realize that it's Joseph, the person that they did all this to. And so now they're saying in 15, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him? Well, they obviously weren't in our Bible study this morning, where we studied in Colossians, where, you're supposed to forgive people. But here they were. So in 16, it says, so they sent word to Joseph saying, your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sin and wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins of the servants of God of your father. When the message came to him, Joseph cried. When his brothers then came and threw themselves down before him, they said, we are your slaves. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? So he said, I'm not someone that's supposed to give judgment on you. I'm not in the seat of God. But in that sense, he was in the seat of God, because he could have left them empty-handed and sent them back off into the land of the famine. But they say, don't be afraid. He said, don't be afraid, am I in the place of God? And 20 is what I want to say is our hammer. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what it is now being done, the saving of many lives. But God. But God are the most powerful words that can be used in your tool belt. Because throughout your life, there's a moment that you can always say, but God. You lose a job, you get fired. You're talking to your friends and they say, what are you going to do now? You're going to lose everything, but God's going to give you enough. You might have a relationship, you might have a marriage, you might have somebody you love that walks out your life and you're all alone. People say, what are you going to do now that you're all alone? You say, but God is always with you. Somebody might say to you that you're losing everything you have, and what are you going to do about that? Everything you've ever worked for is leaving. You say, but God will replace you. See, but God is an amazing power in your tool belt. And so you can look at things in Scripture, not just Joseph's story that gives us the lesson of today, but Joseph's story is so real. Because they did everything they could to harm Joseph. People in your own lives, people you thought were your friends, they stabbed you in the back. People that you counted on, that you thought should be there in a hard time, wasn't there. You felt in a job situation that you've been there longer, knew more, worked harder. The job goes to someone else. These are the things that really happen in our lives. But God has another plan for you. But God makes it better. But God is always available. But we have a tendency to put I where we should put God. Somebody comes to you and they say, I want you to give a presentation to the board. Some people like it. Most people don't actually like to do it. So they'll say, I'm afraid of giving a presentation to the board. They put I there, and I makes it weak. If someone said, I want you to give a presentation to the board, and you said to yourself, I'm nervous about that, but God will give you strength. Now you've turned it around. Now you can't wait to give a presentation to the board. Because God made it happen. God makes it powerful. And he does that with a lot of things. If you turn to Jonah, it's a but God moment in Jonah forgive me, Jonah chapter 2, verses 1 through 6. And again, I'm reading from the New International Version. Jonah chapter 2, verses 1 through 6. And remember, this is because you now have peace from the first 5 words. You now know that you can unscrew or pretty much get in anything that's got kind of a screw on, right? Because you got your flathead, you got your, but even if he doesn't, in your tool belt. So here, Jonah has now decided that he wasn't going to go to Nineveh, he was going to go to Tarsus. That's in chapter 1. He gets on the ship, pays the fare. Storm comes. Storm gets so bad. He recognizes it's him that's causing the storm because he's running away from his duty of Christ, his purpose. Of God's his purpose. So he has them throw him overboard. And so when he was overboard, he was swallowed by a fish. But when he was in it, Jonah was praying. So from inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, "In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead, I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled about me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing of waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank. The earth beneath barred me in forever." But he says it, he wants you to know that not just God, but you, Lord, his God, brought him back to life from the pit. That's when we can really know but God in our own lives. When we have been all but drowned. And they talk about drowning. Ta-Nehisi Coates in his new book talks about drowning, compares it to slavery. It's an all-encompassing thing. It fully takes control of you. You know the end from its beginning. And here he says, the engulfing waters threaten me. So here is Jonah saying that he thought he was drowning. The deep surrounded him. That means that there was nothing other than more water around him. Seaweed was wrapped around his head. So he was trapped and nothing but water around him. Have you ever been trapped in your life in your own seaweed of trouble, your own deep waters of despair? And so he says here that when you're drowning, we have a tendency to focus on the future. It's interesting about how we do that. We focus on the future. We're drowning and we say, I'm drowning. I'm going to drown. I'm going to drown. I'm going to drown. When the first thing we should be doing is saying, I need to swim harder, swim harder, swim harder so I can survive. Right? We need to focus on the present if we're drowning and not the purpose. What's in our present, God is in our present. And so he's saying that even in this moment of despair, he's drowning, seaweeds around him, he recognizes that it's God that lifts him from the pit. So that's a but God moment. If you look at Moses, Noah, take a look at Noah, Genesis chapter 7, 17 through 24, and chapter 8 and verse number 1. These are but God moments in lives that we see other people, and we should be able to see our own lives in these moments. I'm telling you that we all will go through. A doctor tells you that you're sick. They don't have anything for you. They don't know if you're going to get cured. They give you some medication, and they say you might have 6 months. And 2 years later, you're still alive because but God had a different plan. And so here in Genesis chapter 7, 17, 24, and 8 and 1, the flood is coming. Chapter 7, he's built the ark. He's in the ark. This is for those that don't know about Noah. Noah was the most righteous man at that time, and God chose him to build this ark. And it never rained on earth. But the Lord had it with these people all the people of the earth. And so there was about 6 million people on earth at this time. So Lord, God had it with 9,992 people. Okay? He was only going to save 8 people. So for all those people that tell you, I just can't believe God's only going to take this many people. He killed 6 people and saved 8. I know that's not the way it's supposed to be said. You know, he washed the word away, but they didn't make it, so they died, right? Killed, murdered, they didn't make it, drowned, however you want to put it. That's what happened. They did. There you go. Right out there from the front row. Now, verse number 17 of chapter 7. For 40 days, the flood kept coming on the earth. And as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every living thing that moved on land perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all of mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that moved along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock that were in the ark. But God remembered him. If it's real bad, think about that. Read 21, 22, 23 of chapter 7 in Genesis. All of it died, but 8 people lived. So if you're at your job right now and you're going through corona downturn and they're laying off and it's getting to your department and you don't know if you're going to survive, Noah survived. And why? Because God had a different plan. But God remembered Noah, but God's going to remember you. You got to be able to say those words, but you got to say it with confidence, though. You got to say it with confidence like Jonah did, like Joseph did. You can't say, oh God, right? You got to say, but God, because it has to be not just conviction from you to you, conviction from you to him. And so we think about these things. We think about Jonah, and we think about Joseph, and we think about Noah. Well, let's talk about Jesus. In Acts chapter 2, verse 20, this is also spoken about in Acts 3:15 and Acts 13, 29 and 30. But in Acts chapter 20, or actually 20 through 22 through 24, sorry. Acts chapter 2, verses 22 through 24. This is Paul preaching on the day of Pentecost. And so Paul comes out and Paul says, fellow Israelites, listen to this. Jesus of Nazareth was a man accredited by God to you by miracles, wonders and signs, which God did among you through him, as you yourselves know. This man was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan, and he had that plan from the beginning, plan and foreknowledge. And you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to the cross. That's 22 and 23. But God, 24, raised him from the dead, freeing him from the agony of death, because it was impossible for death to keep its hold on him. See, even those that say it's over for you, your life is over, your marriage is over, you can't control this or you lose that, God can bring you back from the dead. When I say dead, I mean there are people that think that it's been all over. They don't know where it is. They don't know how they're going to restart their lives, whether it's the fact that they were married so many years and now they're single parents, or maybe it's somebody that had a job for a long, long time and they would say, well, in 2 more years I can retire, but now they can't retire and now they don't have that job. Now they don't have that pension and they feel like it's all over. But God, can raise